Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Art of Creation show. I am your host, Rebecca Boswell, and today, as always, we're going to be looking at how choice creates, and different possibilities for creating a life and a living that can actually work for you, whatever that is for you. And so today we are joined by Karlina and Weij, and she is going to talk, she's going to talk with us. We're going to have a great conversation around when motivation lapses, choice is all that remains. And I've known Karlina now for several years. She is a life coach. She travels the world facilitating classes, facilitating people, facilitating all kinds of different change, and has created an amazing facilitation of her own life. I really love, Karlina, watching how you grow and evolve and all of the beautiful things that you're choosing in your life and the invitation that you are for others. You're a mother as well, and proof positive that you can actually choose it all, whatever that is for you. So thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thank you for that amazing introduction. I am so grateful. Thank you. It
Yeah,
is
cool.
really cool creating a life that is beyond the normal expectations in this reality,
Yeah.
and can be fun doing that.
Yes, well, and that is one thing that I really see where you do have fun, and you really
Yeah.
have made a commitment, and I even have seen it over the years where you've really made a commitment to fun and a commitment to to really living more fully, and inviting your body to play more, and it's just been really neat to watch that, and to be to be able to see what is possible when people are choosing different things. Um,
Thank you. Yeah.
yeah. So this topic, I love it. You just some backstory for people watching. I know you had posted this beautiful graphic, which we posted earlier in the week on the Art of Creation show page on Facebook, and you had written that, when
Yeah.
motivation lapses, choice is all that remains. And it was like, yes, this is the conversation. Let's have this conversation. And I'm just wondering if you'd like to share a little bit about where the inspiration came to create that graphic, to put it out, and what was going on with you that awareness showed up.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking, because really, I've had that show up a couple times in my life where, you go to choose something and you're like, I have like no motivation to actually create something. Like, one of the first things that I did with Access is, I bought this ring, and this ring was something that was such a big choice that created so much greater in my life and my world and my business. And I had to step up so huge if I was going to say yes and actually choose this piece of jewelry. And like, it made me cry before I could say yes. It was that big. The energy was that big, and the choice was that big. And I used that to motivate me. I
Mm,
used that choice and that energy, and also the ring contributing to me, to actually motivate me. And I find that we do that a lot. Like, something we want to purchase, like a car or a house, we use that for our motivation, or the lack of something, not having enough money, or needing something in your life, or not having something in your life. We actually use that to create and to motivate us to choose something. And when there is nothing that actually motivates you, whether you have it all or you're not missing anything in your life, or whether there just isn't that motivation, whether you've gone past that thing or whatever it might be that motivates you, there's nothing but choice that remains. And that can be one of the most challenging things. And that's what I was going through. There was so much for me to choose and so much for me to play with and create. And I had all these ideas, and it was literally like, okay, now choose, like, create
yeah,
something, play with something. And there was like no motivation,
yeah,
no fear of anything, no desire for anything. Like, there's so much that I play with and I have and I receive, but there wasn't anything solid or like, I have to have this or
Yeah.
I'm missing that to actually motivate a choice as to why I would choose something and why I would create something. And so it was like missing that why, that justification and the reason that we have for everything we choose. Basically, that's
Yeah.
how we kind of function in this world. It was missing that. And it was like, oh, I just have to choose. Like, no
Yeah.
reason, no justification, no motivation, no fear of anything, like no need for anything, just a choice.
Yeah.
And so the space was absolutely amazing and so different and so strange and weird and uncomfortable to just actually choose to create something rather than coming from need, coming from I have to, I need to do this and blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. And yeah, so that was kind of the space where it was like, cool. Yeah, when motivation lapses, choice is all that remains.
Yeah, just choose. Just
Yeah.
choose. Yeah, I recently, a couple of weeks ago, I was on a podcast with Jeneth Blackert, and we were having a similar conversation. And I was saying it sounded very similar to what you just shared. And it was like, when I really got this space of like, I have nothing to prove, like I started to
Yeah.
realize how much I had chosen, right? They say that you're either moving towards something or moving away from something, right? So you're either like
Right.
afraid something's going to happen and that motivates you away from it, or you really
Yeah.
want something and so that's pulling you towards it. And it's like,
Exactly.
right? And it was like, okay, my fuel, what I started to become aware of,
Yeah.
my fuel was either to fit within something or to prove something, which
Mm.
oftentimes had to do with like, I actually fit within something, right? Like sometimes that was a two-part thing. And then I was like, oh my gosh, so if I don't actually have to fit within anything, and if I don't have to prove anything
Yeah.
to anyone or even to myself, because it wasn't always that I was having to prove, there were phases of my life where there were people that I felt the need to prove certain things to. And then it also just sort of morphed into this thing of like, I just had to prove to myself. And then it was like, I
Right.
don't even have to prove anything to myself anymore. So now I'm like, there's nothing. And then I'm like, well, no, it's not that there's nothing. It's that there's everything.
Yes.
And so then
And there's
that's,
so much space.
yes. And that's
Yeah.
what I get, you're pointing at. And it's like when we first really get, nose to nose with all that space, it's like, well, I was asking for space. I was asking to be more space.
Uh-huh.
And then we get it. And then we're like, what the hell is this? Oh,
Yeah, and what do I do with it? And I like how you
yeah.
said, the fuel, because usually there's something that fuels us. There's something that motivates us to choose something. And it really, when there's space to choose absolutely anything and everything,
Yeah.
and there's just space, and there's no requirement, and there's no need, and there's no fuel behind your choices, it's just choice.
Yeah.
It's so different. And
Yeah.
it's so vast. And that can be disconcerting.
Yeah.
And it can kind of throw you off because there's nothing to ping against. There's nothing, like you said, to fit into or to see how this works or how you fit or,
Yeah.
what you're supposed to choose or whatever the case might be. There's nothing. There's just space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Very
now,
different.
yeah. So, I have come to that piece of like, if I were just choosing to create a life that was super fun, or
Yeah.
it's still I mean, it's like my brain is still, attempting to find something like, okay, well, what if I have fun for no reason? It's like, well, okay, but I'm kind of already giving myself a target,
Exactly.
I'm already trying to wheedle into that, into that infinite space and start
Yeah.
to kind of create some reference points and things. So it's that constant thing of like, okay, cool. So what would I like to choose now? And how about now? And how about now? And how about now? And as long as
Yes.
it is fun, okay, great, that's fun. And sometimes it's like, well, that's not really fun, and yet I'm curious. It's like, oh, okay, so today maybe I'd like to follow the curiosity. It's different energy than fun, and yet, okay, let's play with that curiosity. Or, I notice a lot of things showing up with my body of like, wow, that is actually the only quote solid thing. and it's like, oh, so wow. So if I'm actually really listening more to my body and what it would like to create, it was amazing. All this stuff that just started showing
Yeah.
up of like, how about this? How about this? How about this? How about this? I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that was there. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah. You want to play for a while? That's great. I
Yeah.
got nothing going on. Sure.
And our bodies are amazing like that. Like our bodies are amazing tools that we can utilize to give us more information. Essentially it is the entire thing is a sensory organ. It is a antenna for receiving information that you can use to gain more information so you can make choices that actually work for you.
Yeah.
You can ask your body questions. You can utilize your body in the choices that you make. I mean, our bodies are amazing for that, and we don't utilize even like 2% of them.
Yeah.
Um, but it really, like, one of the things you were talking about too is just making a choice. Just what would I like to choose? And then going further, what if I didn't have to justify it?
Ooh, that's
Oop.
my ceiling.
Hi, ceiling. But really, like when I make a choice, what if I didn't have to find a reason for it? What if I didn't have to justify that choice?
Yeah.
Because in this world too, we tend to, when we make a choice and we tell someone, we explain why we did it. We justify the reason why we chose it.
Yeah.
We give them the reasons for choosing it.
Yeah.
So what if you didn't?
Yeah.
We have this, I just started a book club earlier this week, the Projections, Expectations, Separations, Judgments, and Rejections book club. And we had our second meeting last night, and this was a topic of conversation as well. The uncomfortableness that gets created when you choose something, but you don't actually explain yourself. You don't
Mm.
justify it, and you don't give reasons as to why. You just literally choose.
Mm.
And you do the same for you. It's, very often, if you're not talking to someone, but you're choosing for you, you'll justify in your head
Yeah.
why you're choosing something. If you want to buy something, you'd be like, oh, yeah, well, I need it and I could use it, and that doesn't really fit anymore, so I can purchase this. We have all of these amazing reasons and justifications for choosing something. What if you just chose, like you said, for the fun of it?
Yeah.
No reasons, no justifications,
Yeah.
just choice.
Yeah, which totally goes against probably everything
Completely.
that we're taught, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I know you have a son similar in age, in
Yeah,
between
he's
my,
10.
yes. So I'm an
Yeah.
8-year-old and an 11-year-old, and and I'm always amazed, and I'm always looking at, wow, this is so interesting how things will come home and you see how they're being taught the thought process, the logic
Yes.
process, and
Yeah.
how to draw conclusions and how to
Yeah.
fill in those gaps, which is actually very different than what we're talking about. And it's like, okay, so there is a place living in this world with other people to say like, okay, well, if we all kind of play this game this way, then we might have some sense of how other people are functioning in the world, and maybe in theory we can all get along better, um, right, in theory.
And that's still an
But
assumption.
yeah, right,
It's
exactly.
we're not using our awareness at that point because we are very aware beings.
Yeah.
So it is like, even within that space, even within the world of where conclusions are drawn and blanks are filled in, what if that was a constant question in your world? Oh, what is going on for them? Oh,
Yeah.
like what is the conclusion here that would be made in this situation? And it's like, okay, would I like to choose that?
Yeah.
So we can actually add question and the awareness that we have to even what that world is and what they come home with.
Yeah. So being aware of what's being taught, and then also
Yeah.
being aware of how that's not all that there is. It's
Yeah.
like, this is a tool that people
Yeah.
use out in the world, so know how to use it, and
Yes.
also know it's not the only tool in the toolbox.
And I think that's really important because it's, like my son actually grew up with two homes. Like we never lived together. And early on, it would be like, well, I can do this at my dad's and da da da. And it was like, cool. So your dad has certain house rules and I have certain house rules, and they're different. They're
Mm-hmm.
two different worlds. They're two different houses. There's two different ways of being. It's much the same when you use these crazy tools and all these questions and this awareness in your world, there is still a world that functions very differently. And knowing the rules of that world and knowing how that world functions is actually a really important factor to you functioning in, maybe not from, in that world, and using it to your advantage to create beyond that world.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's, this world is, it tends to be kind of small. Like, it's like, you find a mate, you get a house, you have some kids, you work until you're retired so that you can go live. And it's like, for me, that's a very small life. I mean, I've kind of outgrown that, and I don't think I could go back to it. I think I'd rather die than go back to that.
Yeah.
But it is, so I tend to create beyond it. And I have this relationship beyond what any relationship has been for me. And it's different and new all the time. And it creates so much for me. I live in an amazing neighborhood. I never thought I'd live here. Everything is at my doorstep. Like, there's so much that I've created that is beyond the expectation of this world and most people.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I can create that because I'm willing to ask questions and go beyond where this
Yeah.
world is and not function from it. But if I didn't know how this world functioned, I also wouldn't know how to differentiate on how to create beyond it.
Yes. So can some people watching are very familiar with using energetic tools. Some
Right. And
people
some
stumble
aren't.
upon this and it's like, oh, what are they talking about? And I just was wondering, can you talk a little bit more about going beyond? I mean, our topic around motivation and then when there is none, right? Sometimes,
Yeah.
Sometimes people have this sense that if they can't really envision it or believe that it's possible, it's kind of tough to then motivate themselves to get there. So, can you tell us a little bit about your story where, did you envision at some point earlier that what you're living now is possible?
No,
So
I
can you
had
talk about
no
how,
clue.
yeah, like just some of how it showed up for you in terms of being able to go beyond and go beyond and go beyond, even if you didn't
Yeah.
have this in your head from the beginning?
Yeah, I would highly recommend not knowing what you're going to create, because way more fun stuff comes up than you can ever imagine, because
Yeah.
our imagination is a limitation to begin with.
Yeah.
So what you can now imagine is probably the limitation of your world, and you can go beyond it.
Yeah.
You might not know what's beyond that, and that's the fun thing. That's the exciting thing, and that's where you get to use your curiosity and the wonder. What it looks like is basically that wondering. It's kind of like being a 1.5-year-old where you press the button to see what it does, and then you press it again to see what it does then, and then you press it again to see what it does then. And is it ever different? Does it
Yeah.
ever change? Is it the same thing, but not actually drawing a conclusion?
Yeah.
And that's where, with Access Consciousness, we use a lot of questions to create awareness. And then the questions create awareness, which creates more possibilities for choice. So even when I started, I was living in a community because I wanted to be in a community with my son. So he was born, we were living in that space when he was born. And it was great because there was a whole bunch of other kids around. I was a single mom. I did not know how to be a mom. So it was great to have that support and people in my lives who I could connect with and talk to. I did lots of mom groups. And all of it was like, yes, this and that and that. And then when I added access to it, it was like, oh, cool. Like, I get a lot of information from all of these different sources and from what I see. And what do I know? What do I know that actually works for me?
Mm-hmm.
And it's that which kept creating. And then even, beyond that space, that got, again, I'm going to refer to it as being too small because I outgrew it.
Yeah.
So even though, Ben, I think at that time was only like 5 or 6, maybe, no, maybe 4 or so. And, but I was like, I can't live here anymore. I mean, like, the people in it, while they were great people, there was a lot of drugs, like marijuana and stuff being smoked and drinking and stuff. And that's not something I choose. So having that waft into my house all the time and not being able to open the windows in the summertime, I'm like, this doesn't work for me. Like, I actually want to go beyond this and create greater. And so
Mm-hmm.
started asking questions, and then also got my son involved. Where would you like to live? Um, and so we've moved to different places, and each one created different possibilities and created more awareness for me. And that was just through choice of, okay, this isn't working. What would we like to create?
Mm-hmm.
And not knowing what it was that we wanted to create, like not being specific about it, but more creating from the energy.
Yeah.
And that's where, if you don't know anything about access, like ping me, ping Rebecca, like talk to one of us, because we can, talk to you wherever you are. But it's a playing with an energy which is actually undefined. And when you're willing to play with an energy that is undefined, that's what creates beyond the limitations of our imagination and beyond our reality as it is right now.
Mm. So are there any specific tools that you recall in that time when you were like, okay,
Yeah.
we're going to go
Yeah.
beyond, we're going to go beyond, we're going to go beyond. I don't know how, I don't know what it's going to look like. I know I'm choosing it. Were there some favorite tools that you liked to play with during that period?
Definitely. And some of them are the most basic ones that you learn right away. And I still, every day I use them. They
Always.
are the
Yeah.
greatest. Yeah.
Yeah.
The tool I started with was, how does it get any better than this?
Mm-hmm.
And I would ask that, and energy changed. And I was so skeptical, and I was so, in my head, and had to understand absolutely everything, that it made no sense to me. But I couldn't deny that something changed and energy changed. And I didn't even use the word energy at that point. I didn't understand what it created or how it was different, but I couldn't deny that something wasn't different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kept playing with that and kept playing with that. And then one of the next ones I added, which I still love this one, is, what will it take for blank to show up?
Mm.
And you can put anything in that blank. And if you're willing to just ask it and have no point of view about how it must show up or what it needs to look like, it shows up
Yeah.
in the most amazing ways. Like, I've used that so many times. And especially with the housing, I literally would ask, so what would I like to choose? And what future would I like to create?
Mm.
And can we have that show up now, please?
Mm-hmm.
Because it is that, every big choice like that, especially like moving, like, you're planning to stay there for a while. I mean, it's not like, oh, I'm gonna move for a month or two. That's not how we live here. So it is a bigger choice. And especially when you have kids, like, that makes it a bigger choice even. So it is that, like, what is the future I'd like to create, and where is that energy?
Mm.
And every time I found a house, it was literally the energy that I perceived that to be, that was the house.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter if I went to go see two or three, or never even saw anything but
Yeah.
the one ad that I saw on Craigslist or in the paper that had that energy. It's like, yep, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the house.
Well, and that's sort of what can be weird about all of this. And when we talk about energy, and especially when we're practical minded, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
we need to make, again, those reasons, justifications of like how this all fits and how this works and how this is not crazy, and that it's not make believe, and whatever all those things are. And what I get is, when we're talking about motivation, it really is this thing of like, what do I have to do? And figuring out what the different steps are, and then making sure that you do all those things, and that you stay in this mindset of, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
Whereas what you're talking about, really, it's not even the same like playing field or game or
No.
universe as motivation, because you're really talking about knowing what you know, but following the energy. So basically just like getting a sense of what it is, even though you may not know exactly, what it looks like. And you might even think, oh, it must be a house I'm looking for. And yet when you perceive or you sense a particular energy that matches the future that you'd like, it may actually be something that's not a house or not what you thought it
Yeah.
would be. And so then you have that choice. Do I actually follow what is showing up here and that I know and that I get is actually a match to what I'm asking for? Or do I try to keep going with what I thought and stay motivated to try and chase that thing that I'm supposed to be doing to get, it's like,
Yeah.
uh,
And it's the weirdest thing to, when you're so used to like creating lists and following all the steps and doing what's required, because that's what this world teaches you.
yeah,
It is the weirdest thing to go, okay, we're just gonna trust this and see what shows up. And
yeah,
but there's a trust in you that you get to create, and there's a trust in the universe. And sometimes it's easier when you start to trust an outside source. So trust in the universe to provide for you, trust in God to provide for you, whatever works for you. Sometimes it's easier when you start to trust in something else
mm-hmm,
to have your back.
mm-hmm,
And over time, as you keep choosing that, you will also start to get that, oh, I am a creator. I am the one who creates, and I
yeah,
actually create my own reality. I create everything that I see around me. So
yeah,
I am a co-creator in that, and you
yeah,
start to actually trust you.
mm-hmm,
But it is like when you first start, I mean, you know, like taking the example of housing, like what do you do when you go look for a house? Well, or anywhere to live, like whether it's an apartment or anything else, you go and see places, you go and find places that are in your price range, you go and see them, make sure they have the things that you want, and make sure, the neighborhood is great and everything works. And if that's the case, then you can choose it.
mm-hmm,
That's how you do it. And you have to go see a bunch of places because it's definitely, you can't just go see one.
yeah,
So following the energy, it's like there would be times where I'm like, okay, I gotta move, and I have a week before I gotta move, and I've been looking, like I've been kind of wondering all month, and like even this last time that I moved, um, we kept wondering like, okay, like when is this place going to show up? And there wasn't, scouring the papers every single day. Like I didn't even go on Craigslist half the time to see what was there and what was showing on up. It was more like, do I look now? Do I look now? And it was constantly like, nope, nope, nope. And then like a week before we had to move, it was like, okay, now look. And then this house became available, and the house has actually just dropped in price, which is why it wouldn't have shown up previously. So
ah,
I didn't learn that until much later, but that's what happens when you follow the awareness, and it's like, okay, look now. And then we saw this house and we're like, that's the energy. And we went to go see it, and it was like, yeah, it's perfect. We'll take it. So we saw like, one house basically
mm-hmm,
that we actually wanted to move into. And, this is after playing with it for a little bit. But like you said, it is hard to get out of that. I have to do it this way and do this and follow the next step, and that's the next step.
yeah,
And it's hard to first, right off the bat, create from an energy that is beyond where you're currently at. Because even one of the first times I moved with Ben, we moved into an apartment. And I had the idea like, well, I can only afford so much. And for that, I either have to live in a place like this or a place like that. And I really should look at apartments. And I've never really, in like me personally, I'm just not an apartment person. So that's not something that's easy for me. But I was so determined. I'm like, this is what I can afford. This is all I can do. And this is where I need to be. So that's all that showed up. And there was some that showed up, but that's all that I could see. I could
mm,
not see my moving into a house, like an actual full house. I didn't want to live in a basement suite, so I'd already cut that off with my point of view. So really all that could show up was an apartment. And the apartment was great, it was a family complex, blah, blah, blah. But again, for me, it's hard to be around that many people when I'm this aware and
yeah,
having them on top of you and all around you. And so you become really aware of the mindset of your neighbors.
yeah,
And again, there's no wrongness. I mean, even that choice created so much for me for learning how much is actually not mine. That tool of, who does this belong to?
mm-hmm,
And truly living it. I mean, I had to live it in that apartment because I wouldn't have been able to survive otherwise. because
Yeah.
none of it was mine. And I was so aware of all of the people that were around me.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is absolutely a gift, and you receive so much of everything if you're willing to receive. But it was like that limited viewpoint of this is what I can afford, and I definitely can't live in a house, and I don't want to live in the basement suite, so I should look for an apartment. That's all that was allowed to show up.
Mm.
So if we can actually play outside of that and not have those definitions, and again, you may not be able to in the first or the second try, like, with anything, like just give yourself that allowance to, choose and then choose again. But really, it is this playing of what is the future I'd like to create and what is beyond that that I'm not even aware of yet.
Yeah. So, and continuously asking that to open the
Yeah.
door bit more,
Yes.
bit more.
Yeah.
So your financial reality has changed
Yeah.
quite a bit in what I hear from what you're sharing, and then also, just knowing. um, so I get it's a similar, process. But what are there any specific tools in relation to money that you were saying that you had kind of decided that this was all that could show up at a certain time, that's all
Yeah.
that you could see, and then again that thing of like, okay, and I know I'd like to go beyond this, and yet we can't always envision what that's like, envisioning what you've created. So was it any different with financial ease and financial change? Were there any specific tools relating to your financial situation that you used that were different, or were you using these tools in general just for everything?
Um, I would say these tools in general. I mean, that's the amazing thing. You can apply these tools to absolutely everything. And I would ask the question, what would it take for $2,000 to show up this month for me?
Mm-hmm.
And it would, or if I wanted to go to like an access class, like I remember there was an advanced body class that I wanted to go to. And at that time it was like $2,000. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I'm willing to do this, universe. Let's go. But what would it take for that money to show up for me to go, to fly there, to be there, to stay there, to attend the class, all of that? So,
Yeah.
sometimes asking for money isn't actually asking for money. It's to ask for the things that we would like to show up in our lives.
Mm.
And that can actually create greater. So going to a conference or going to a vacation or something. Your ceiling wants to be in on this conversation.
I know. Well, every time I turned off my sound on my phone, and every time something comes through, it vibrates, and then the whole phone is like, and then it falls down.
That's awesome.
And my ceiling would like to be in the mix. So I'm sorry.
That's okay. But yeah, like what if what you're actually asking to create doesn't have to be in the form of money? So asking to go on a vacation, or asking to go visit a friend who lives somewhere else who you haven't seen in a while, or asking to do that trip that you've always wanted to
Mm,
do,
mm,
and I know a lot of people who play with access consciousness, they're constantly asking to go to specific classes because of what it gifts to them and because of what it changes in their world.
mm.
So actually asking for that is sometimes a lot easier than asking for the money, because we have
Yeah,
more points of views about the money showing up.
yeah,
So if we ask for something, like I've had so many people who can't create a cent, but they can create a car given to them for absolutely free that is
yeah,
in fine working condition. And it's like, but do you acknowledge that this is actually the wealth and the riches and the money that you're asking for?
yes,
And they don't quite make that connection because
yeah,
they have points of views about
yeah,
money and how it can show up and how it must be
yeah,
and what must be
yeah,
and what can't be. So it is really, all of these tools work in the same way. And again, when we talk about motivation and choice, it is your choices that actually create and expand your finances as well. So
mhm,
the choice to move to the apartment, it actually created a lot in my world because more business showed up, more work showed up for me, and I actually created more of an income. So getting out of the energy of where I was living to a new space created greater in that sense, allowing more to show up for me. And then the
Mm.
next move, we moved to a house, and that one again expanded my financial. That one was an increase in rent. That was like a doubling in rent. So for me, that was like, whoa, this is big. But I'm like, but well, one of the reasons that we were moving too is my kid wanted to walk to school. So my son was like, but mom, because we were a little further away, so I always had to drive him. And he's like, but I want to walk to school. If we're going to move, I want to walk to school. So we're like, okay, cool. So what would it take for an amazing house to show up where we can walk to school? And so that was one of the things we played with. And then as we drove to school, we kept getting pulled to this energy. And then finally it showed up on Craigslist. And I was like, ooh, that's the energy. And we went to look at it. And one of the funny things that I'll never forget is that my son was asking, I was asking him because wanted to include him because he's an amazing creator. So if you have kids, they are amazing energy. They have way less points of view than you do. So they can create way beyond where your limitations are. So pull their energy in and play with them. And that's what I did with him too, moving into this house. I was like, so what would you like in a house? Like, what would we want to
Yeah.
ask? And, it was the backyard that we wanted and close to school. And then he's like, and a skylight. And I was like, and so I went into point of view and I was like, well, gee, that's cool. We can ask for that. And just know not everything we ask for might show up. And so I'm just like, I need to prepare him that we're not going to fail. And like, I went into all my own headspace.
Yeah.
And then we went to go see this house, and we're walking through it. And he's like, Mom, look. And he points up, and there's a skylight. And I was like, damn. I'm like, wow, that is
Good thing
amazing.
I
And
have you creating along with me.
exactly. So it was an amazing space. It was close to school. We met so many friends that we walked with to school along the way, and it was a huge contribution. And it doubled my rent, which again made me have to step up to actually create more to allow for that space.
Mm.
So it's not only the asking for money to show up, it's also asking for a greater life to show up. It's
Mm.
asking for everything that you desire to show up. And it's those choices, the willingness to take those leaps and the willingness to make those choices and follow the energy. So and allowing the universe and allowing everything to come into play and actually contribute to you.
Mm. Yeah.
I know that's a big conversation in a small amount
It
of
is. I
time,
know,
but
and and it's so interesting because there. I just perceive that there are so many different pieces and ways of kind
there
of looking
are,
at this whole thing, and this choice creates, and you can look at it actually in a very logical way for people that
yes,
require that to begin. It's like I choose something that creates a different set of variables. And now I choose something again, that creates a new set of variables.
yeah,
And so that literally creates your reality. That literally what I choose
yes,
right now, whether I choose this mood, whether I choose this action, whether I choose this
yeah,
thought pattern, whether I choose whatever it is, that is going to create what shows up in the next, several seconds, minutes,
yeah,
possibly hours or days. Whatever it is, that's gonna create. That's choice creates. And then there's this thing of like, okay, and if we're willing to just play with the possibility of there being more available on an energetic level, on a level that is beyond just the thinking logical mind, and we do open ourselves up to that possibility, it's like, okay, well, and when I ask the question, what if things do arrange themselves differently? What if the actual choices and possibilities that present themselves now are different just by asking? Would
yes,
I then be willing to ask more, ask different? And sometimes people are like, well, it's a lot of pressure, if you're for you to say that you can choose everything and create everything, and that's sort of narcissistic or kind of an interesting point of view. And it's like, well, and who's to say that it's like we are just a portion of everything else. And so we are working in concert in symphony, in communion with everything else that's going on. And things are constantly changing and constantly moving. So if it is possible to contribute to what shows up and what can change, then why not at least play with it?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, sorry. My phone's about to die, so I had to go get a charger. But
Cool.
yeah, no, why not change with it? And I love what you were saying about, choice creates, and every choice creates, the little ones and the big ones.
Yeah.
I've been talking about like houses because it's a bigger choice for most people, so you can get the energy of it more.
Mm-hmm.
But really, choice creates, even the choice to go to a coffee shop or the choice to, eat a green apple over a red apple. All of it contributes to what gets created next and what shows up next. Stopping at a certain coffee shop versus stopping at a grocery store or something like that. You connect with different people, you meet different people. All of that has an impact on everything you choose and the next choice.
Mm-hmm.
And for the same token, by choosing something and then being like, ooh, that might not have been the best choice, you can choose again. If you went to the coffee shop, and now I'm using little choices, but if you went to the coffee shop and you're like, this sucks, I don't like it, there's nothing here, I don't want to eat any of this stuff, then you can still choose again. You can go somewhere else. You can go next door. Like, what if there is no wrongness in the choices we make? They're just choices that create greater, that create more awareness, that give us more information so that we can learn what it is we'd actually like to choose.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes what seems like a small choice, like, I don't get it. I was following the energy and the energy said to go here and now I'm here and there's nothing here. And like that was wrong. And this energy stuff is baloney. And then you get back in your car and you find out that there had been, an accident in the intersection where you would have been at that time had you not stopped, or you would have missed somebody who came to just stop by at your house if you had been so it's like you don't always know, and we just we can keep choosing, and there's really no what value is making yourself wrong? Like, seriously, what if there's actually more? What if we know more than we acknowledge? And what if there's also stuff out there that we may never consciously know? And would we be willing to, just let our knowing be that the universe is conspiring? I love, I think it was the first time I heard of this was Jack Canfield years ago. Like, what if you actually allowed yourself to live in a world in which everything was conspiring in your favor in every moment?
See, and right there, that is actually the beauty of, one, a question, and two, a choice. Because every single time you ask a question, you ask for something to show up. The universe conspires to rearrange all the particles and atoms and molecules to make that happen in your world. And every single time you make a choice, the universe again rearranges everything to allow for that choice and then create the path that follows. Which is where every single choice creates. And you can ask for a future. If you define it, then only that future can show up, and then you have to ignore everything else, and then it probably won't show up because you're making different choices along the way. And that's where the beauty is of the energy undefined, when you don't even know what it's going to look like, but you get a sense of how amazing that is. You get a sense of the energy of like, yes, yummy, that's what I'd like to choose. If you play with that, and if you actually ask for that to show up, then it can create so great, and the universe will rearrange all of those particles to make it happen and to make that show up.
And what's more fun? I mean, is it more fun to be in the energy of proving that it's, that it's not real? Or is it actually more fun to be in a space of possibility and of wonder? It's like, look, maybe it's pure psychology in my brain. Like, if I say this and I acknowledge this, maybe my brain just is, you know, all the little synapses are firing and it's like, that's what I can see. And, you know, maybe we can actually show exactly how and why. And, you know, maybe it is just science. Yeah. Okay, cool. You know what? Fine. Whatever it is, you know, whatever it is, it's fun. For me, it's fun to be magic.
And what if it's both?
Exactly. So,
I mean, like, that's the cool thing, is now you see a lot of the science come up behind the crazy weird things that people have been teaching people for years. Yeah. Even Jack Canfield, you know, like there's so many who have been doing things that are out of the ordinary that have started this, like, you know, 20, 30, 40 years ago. Yeah. And science is now starting to come around, and it has been for the last like 5 to 10 years, but it's starting to actually support what it is that we already knew long ago. Yeah. So what if we were willing to trust what we know, you know? And the science may show up in the future, and you may figure out that, like, you may get the information of like, yeah, that's exactly what I was aware of. You may never. Right. And that's okay. What if you actually trusted you? What if you trusted you to know? And what if it was fun? Yeah. What if you just chose for fun and chose to play and chose because that adds joy to your world and your life and your day? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, which is more fun, you know, being the doubting Thomas, or being, you know, being a spring of ever-changing possibilities. I mean, I know for me what's more fun. But I always say to the kids, I'm like, you know, magic is just science that hasn't been discovered yet. You know, it's like, oh, I love that.
Yeah. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, cool. Right. Yeah. I'm flying in a plane. That would be magic. Yeah. Until it's not, until it's science. Talking to someone, you know, in China when I'm in Austin, Texas, that's magic. No, it's a cell phone. It's science. Right. But it's kind of like, when and where are we sitting? Yes. And, you know, so.
Because all of it was created from a possibility, from a question, from a wondering, and from a dream. Exactly. You know, like, especially the airplane is a wonderful example, because they had a knowing. They knew something could be created, that this was a possibility. They just didn't have the how, and they didn't have the support. But they didn't give up. They kept choosing, they kept playing, they kept wondering, because they knew something. Yeah. And now it's so normal to fly anywhere.
Exactly. Exactly. I know. And now, like, I love this, you know, Elon Musk, and he has this vision, you know, this vision of everyone being able to do space travel, or even having the rockets where basically it goes up and then comes back down anywhere on the planet, and it's like what, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, right? And I mean, how crazy is that? And yet, is it crazy? Yeah, is it crazy, or is it actually just a possibility that is, you know, is being is being explored? And, you know, there are enough people, you know, who are willing to play in that space of crazy impossible, to see, well, what if it is possible? Like, what else? What else?
Exactly.
What else? So,
and Elon Musk is an amazing example, because he does create the impossible. I mean, even like, you take Tesla, and he's created it in the face of all the doubters, all the naysayers. You know, same thing with SpaceX. And to the point where, like, now Russia is complaining that SpaceX is taking all their business. And it's like, well, that's really cool, because, you know, 2, 3, 5 years ago, you were saying how he can never do that, and he's no threat, and nobody paid any attention to him because they didn't believe in him. Yeah. And now all of a sudden you're upset because he's taking your business away. And it's like, well, then step up and create beyond where he's creating. Step up and out-create everything that's been created already. Mm-hmm. What if it is a game of leapfrog, where one creation inspires another creation to create even bigger, and then there's a third that creates even. What if we can play leapfrog? What if we can actually play together rather than trying to put other people down? Yeah, putting energy into conversation. I know, man. Yeah, putting all your energy into trying to pull the guy ahead of you down, instead of actually, having you know, this thing where you actually can inspire each other, and what if there's actually enough greatness for everyone? Yeah. Oh, there is. Okay, cool. Let's choose that. So exactly.
That's awesome. So we are getting to the top of the hour, Karlina, and I'm just wondering if there's anything else around this topic. I know we could have so many different spin-off conversations from this, and maybe we will.
We're
How
gonna have
fun
to
would
talk
that
for
be?
weeks.
Yes, I love that. So yes, we will do that. And around this topic, is there anything else? Is there anything else that you would like to offer into the conversation or to the viewers today before we
Yeah,
close?
I would just like to say that no matter where you are, no matter what's going on, just choose something.
Yeah,
Whether you have a motivation or you don't, just choose. Something will get created from your choice. Whether it's what you judge as being right or wrong, really makes no difference. If you're choosing the wrong thing, you still made a choice, and then you can choose again into a different direction.
hmm
And chances are, when you make a choice, you will receive more awareness, you'll receive more information, and you can make more choices that are greater into more possibilities. So
yeah,
just keep choosing, no
yeah.
matter what. Don't ever stop. Keep choosing.
Keep on choosing. Just keep choosing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And we'll have to get
Exactly. Just like Dory.
a little Dory of consciousness. That's what we'll have to get on the next show. Awesome. Well, Karlina, thank you so much. We are going to have the link in the show notes once this gets posted to YouTube. So we will have Karlina's uh, web address
Website.
there so that you can connect with her. Yes, it sounds like. uh, so you can connect with her directly. You can see all of her offerings. She does offer one-to-one sessions. She also does travel offering and facilitating classes. She also has online offerings. I know you did just start the book club. I'll have the
We
link.
did, and we have extended it too, so people can still join before the
Okay.
15th of this month.
Okay,
So,
great. So then
yeah.
that link will be in there. It's an amazing book.
Oh,
I
wow.
mean, if you don't think you have any projections, expectations, judgments, rejections, or
Don't
separations,
come.
then,
Don't come.
I want your number because you're amazing. And if you do actually have a few, then you're amazing too. And why not go play with them with Karlina? So those links will be there. And also, I am also facilitating, or well, co-facilitating a money class this weekend on Sunday with another facilitator, Andrea Loggins. So I will also put the link to that in
Awesome.
case anyone wants
Yeah.
to change some of their reality with money this weekend on a little deep
Yeah.
dive. So
It's
how does it get any better than that?
awesome. I love it. Thank you so
Cool.
much. Thank
All
you for
right.
having me on the show, and thank you for this awesome conversation.
Thank you. And thank you, all of you who are watching today and in the future. You bring a certain energy to each of these episodes, and we are ever grateful for that. So over the next week, I wonder what you'll be choosing, and we'll see you next Friday. I wonder what we'll discover next. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.